Hi, English students. It is Monday, April the 27th. I hope you had a really great weekend. It looks like you had a busy weekend. My inbox is full of assignments, which I'm really excited to get to. So thank you for staying on top of your work. There are still a few of you that I haven't heard from lately, so I'm going to start reaching out again, and hopefully we can get you back on track. We are about halfway through the novel now. I've introduced to you your final unit assignment. And so, yeah, we're on track, and we'll just keep motoring along. We can do this for just one more month. It'll be okay. All right, so here we go. Today we're going to pick up with chapter 9, 10, and 11. Now, there's going to be very little writing for you to do because I really want to give you the opportunity to prepare yourself for this major unit assignment at the very end, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's what we're looking for the next couple chapters. Chapter 9 starts on page 87. Page 87 is chapter 9. Chapter 9 is very short. It's only, 3.5 pages long, more like 3 pages long. And it's called Story Part 2. What's really great about this chapter is it sort of picks up where obviously Story Part 1 came in, or where it ended, because Megan started to share around the campfire some of the terrible conditions that led to the collapse of, just the collapse of civilization. You know, the climate change and the war on water and things like that led to eventually indigenous people being hunted for bone marrow. And this picks up on that story again. It is beautifully written. Beautifully written. And again, it's only 3 pages long. I really want to encourage you. Nay, I want to require you to read this chapter out loud. Slowly, articulately, with expression. I think that you will get so much more out of it, and the impact of all of the things that led to the world being as it is in this dystopian society if you read it out loud with expression and slowly. For example, I don't want to infringe on any copyrights here by putting it on YouTube, but I'll read a short excerpt. So this is from page 87. The earth was broken. Too much taking for too damn long, so she finally broke. But she went out like a wild horse, bucking off as much as she could before lying down. The melting north meant the water levels rose and the weather changed. It changed to violence in some cases, building tsunamis, spinning tornadoes, crumbling earthquakes, and the shapes of countries were changed forever, whole coasts breaking off like crust. And all those pipelines in the ground, they snapped like icicles and spewed bile all over forests, into lakes, drowning whole reserves and towns. So much laid to waste from the miscalculation of infallibility in the face of a planet's revolt. People died in the millions when that happened. The ones that were left had to migrate inward. It was like the second coming of the boats. So many sick people and not enough time to organize peacefully. Now, if I hadn't read that out loud, I would have skimmed through it and said, yeah, background, 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 next page. Because we do that. We look for what we think is important and don't slow down to take in the details. Please, friends, I'm not going to make you reflect on it this time, but read chapter 9 called Story Part 2 out loud, either to yourself or to someone else. That's all you have to do for chapter 9. All right, chapter 10. Chapter 10 starts on page 91, and it's called Back into the Woods. So they've had to leave the abandoned hotel. Meg has insisted that they continue on. There is a lot that happens in this fairly short chapter. We get so much information. So what your assignment is to, for chapter 10, create a point form list of 10 important things that happen or that you learn about in chapter 10. 10 things from 10. 10 point form list important things that happen in that chapter. I think that there is so much to choose from. Try to include specific details. Choose what you think are the most important things that happen, or the most important things that you learn about. And you just have to write a sentence for each is fine. Oh my goodness, I need more tea. I don't have any caffeine with me. Pardon me. Okay. And then chapter 11. Chapter 11 is something, again, I'm not going to have a required assignment for, but I know you're going to want to read it. Chapter 11 is Mig's coming to story. Well, let me just give you a spoiler. It's the first half of his coming to story. We learn the second half of it like 40 pages later. So you're going to be left on a bit of a cliffhanger. Who is Mig? Where did he come from? How did he end up being there? How did he come to be in this group? How did he come to be the person who had to leave his old life and start running in the woods? How did he come to be? So please read Mig's Coming To Story Part 1 and enjoy it. That's all you have to do for that. I want to talk a little bit about the major unit assignments because I've gotten some great questions from you and I've got some good feedback on this assignment. So let's focus on the Coming To story first. Yes, this is basically a short story. And it's a short story that comes from a place of truth that actually happened to you or that you were witness to. So a short story written well is a tricky creature. And so I gave you a little bit of advice on how to plan for that coming to story. And I hope that if you're feeling creative, you've chosen something that tells how you came to be. How you came to be somebody who went back to college, how you came to be a mom, how you came to be someone who really makes the best bannock out of anybody they know, somebody who came to be the person with a pair of, snowmobiles that want to race. You choose. I mean, how did it come to be? I'm hoping that you choose important, significant moments from your life. Either small significance, big significance, I don't know. But I want to make sure that, this is worth 30% of your course grade. It's going to take some effort. It's going to take some planning, and it's going to take you refining your craft a little bit. And writing a short story is new, so we have to make sure that we do it well. So I would like to give you some tools, some resources that will help you. There is no work that needs to be passed into me for these, but you got to do them. Like you really have to do these things, and they are going to be useful to you if you engage with them. If you had a science experiment, for example, in Sandy's class, you wouldn't just sit down at a table in front of a pile of chemicals and start doing the experiment. You would want to learn what the materials are, what's the theory, how do you craft them together, what will happen if you do something wrong. There's steps to take. And so that's what we're going to try doing here today is I'm going to give you some resources on how to do this well, the steps to take, how to refine your craft of being a creative writer. So let's go into a screen share and I will talk to you a little bit about some of these resources. The first one I want to refer you to is somebody I've talked about before in my class, and that's my friend Niigaan. Niigaan Sinclair is a columnist and a writer for the Winnipeg Free Press. He is Anishinaabe. He is a brilliant writer. He's also a professor of Native Studies at the University of Manitoba. Great friend. I'd hope that you'd have a chance to meet him for the Northwoods Festival, but unfortunately that's not happening. So this is Niigaan, and he has wonderful columns that you can read about. All of them are about First Nations, Métis, Inuit issues, usually Manitoba focused, but always on a broader scale. Well, Niigaan is also on Facebook, and that's where I'm going to refer you to. I will copy and paste the links into the email that you looked at, but easiest way to access this is through Facebook. So again, his name is Niigaan James Sinclair, and he has a public Facebook page that's for his professional life. On April the 1st through 5th, he published a series of free workshops called How to Write Creative Nonfiction. These were done with the Create to Learn at Home program. It was sponsored by Taking IT Global, and it was in partnership with Imaginative. And so there are wonderful resources through the Imaginative program. This is one of them that he created for them. This is a 4-part series in which he talks about how to write nonfiction. So stories that are true, but they're creative stories. They're stories that are like stories, but they come from a place of truth. And that's what you're being asked to do. So I'm going to turn this on just for a few moments so you can get a feel for this. This is Niigaan just sitting in his living room talking to you about how to write creative nonfiction. There we go. That's better. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. Okay, so we are going to keep going here. And so that just gives you an idea of what Niigaan Sinclair's workshop will look like. And so let's stop the share and jump back into it. Okay, hi. So that is Niigaan Sinclair's nonfiction writing workshop. The first 3 parts of that are specifically what I want you to pay attention to. It's all about how to create the idea. So if you're already feeling stuck about the story that you want to share, or you're not sure how to start it, even if you have an idea, workshop number 1 is about 20 minutes long, and it's a great foundation for that creative writing. Number 2 is all about how to elaborate it, how to get into the details that are so important when it comes to telling a good story, because yeah, the devil's in the details. The excitement, the world crafting that you're going to do is going to be in your ability to show and not tell. And he'll speak about that. Part number 3 is all about the editing process, about how to refine this rough piece of writing that you've created and try to take it to the next level in a more polished sort of way. Part number 4 is optional, although I certainly recommend it. It's all about what happens if writing is something that you're passionate about. What does it look like to become a published writer? How can you get your story shared? So that is for Niigaan Sinclair. That is his writing workshop, and that's a great place to start for your creative writing. There's some other things. No, okay, I want you to promise me, Robin, if I'm going to do this coming to story assignment, I am going to watch Niigaan Sinclair's workshop series. It will make you a better writer, I promise. Here's 2 more things that I recommend that you do in order to complete this coming to story. The first thing is I actually recommend that you go back into the Marrow Thieves and read the coming to stories again. Reread chapter 1, but not for the plot line this time, but for what Cherie Dimaline is doing. How is she telling that story? Where does it begin? What does it look like when people are speaking? How do they punctuate those things? How do they move from scene to scene? How do they create suspense? Look at it with the curious eye of a writer and say, how did she write this story? If you really liked Wob's story and the action-packed nature of that and how she talked about memories, go back and reread Wob's Coming To story and ask yourself, what has Cherie Dimaline done here? And how can I do that too? Same thing with the first half of Meg's story. So again, go back and reread these Coming To stories and ask yourself, how can I do what she's doing there? I've always said, and actually I think I stole this from Stephen King. Stephen King wrote a book about writing. I think it's called Why I Write. Yeah, I think so. It's through the public library. Anyway, he always said that in order to be good, you cannot be a good writer unless you're a reader. So you cannot be a good storyteller unless you listen to stories, unless you hear other people do what you're doing to inform your own understanding of how it's done. So there's a podcast that I want to recommend to you. And if you haven't read this or heard of this podcast before, I really, really recommend it. So here we go. Free to go into the share. I love sharing new things. I'm such a dork when it comes to that stuff. How do I get out of Niigaan's thing? Shush. I hit escape. That's how. Okay. There is a podcast that's completely free. If you're on the internet, then it's at themoth.org. If you have an iPhone, then you just go to the apps and you put in The Moth. The Moth is a free storytelling podcast. And it's exactly the assignment that you're doing. It's completely the story. Moth stories are true, as remembered by the storyteller, and always told live. Listen to the latest episode of the Moth Radio Hour, the Moth Podcast, or dip into our library of stories going back to 1997. Most of these stories are under 15 minutes. They're all based on truth, and they're all beautiful examples of stories. So I would like to recommend that you download the Moth Podcast, that you, just a sec, that you download the Moth Podcast, and that you try listening to a couple of other stories. And all of those might be able to, or any of those might be able to inspire you and inform your own writing. Good writers read. Good storytellers listen to stories. And again, I don't want to scare you. I really hope that you are the one who chooses to do this type of storytelling rather than doing a more traditional essay. All of the fingers crossed that this is something that you're going to do. Okay, the other option for your assignment is if you said, you know what, Robin, I'm not a creative writer, I don't really want to try this, I just want to do an essay and get out of here, then I think that the critical response essay is going to be great for you. However, like the storytelling, in order to be a good essay writer, you need to inform yourself about your subject as deeply as possible. It's also going to take work. It's also going to take time and effort and preparation and refining your craft. In this case, your craft, because it's half of your mark of this essay, so essentially it's 15% of your course grade, is how well you know the Marrow Thieves. And so we need to do more research, more understanding, more information gathering about the Marrow Thieves. So here's your extracurricular learning. Here's your extension opportunity. Here's the work that you should do to write this essay well. So here we go. Let's do another screen share, and I will take you to the place that I think will help you the best. So we are going to go into Canada Reads. I've mentioned Canada Reads a couple of times in the past, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows what Canada Reads is. Okay, so Canada Reads is a literary contest started by CBC as far back as 2002. Yeah, that sounds right. 2002 was the first year for Canada Reads. Here's how it works. Canada Reads has, or through CBC, people nominate books. And the criteria for the nomination is that it should be a book that every Canadian should read. Think about that. Have you ever had a book that you feel like every Canadian should read? Well, in 2018, CBC decided that The Marrow Thieves was one of those books that every Canadian should read. It was nominated in 2018 along with 4 other books, and they were wonderful books, amazing books. The one by Craig Davidson. I'm gonna regret that. Anyway, wonderful book all about being a bus driver. Anyway, but this one was nominated, and the way that the format works is that they have, I think, 5 episodes. It used to be just on the radio, but now it's actually on TV. And normally it's around this time of year, although this year it's been postponed because of COVID. They take it to TV, and each episode they debate. I don't feel like I'm explaining this well. There's 5 people, there's 5 books. Each person has a book that they're going to defend. They're going to say, this book is the most important book, and every Canadian should read it. And every episode, they debate it, and then they vote. And every episode, one book gets voted off. And then they continue to debate it. And the last book standing at the end of 5 episodes is the Canada Reads winner. Let me give you an example. And these are the episodes on YouTube that I want you to watch if you're going to be writing a critical response essay. So here we go. If I was to put into YouTube Canada Reads 2018, here's the links that are going to come up. You can see the finale is there. You can see that Cherie Demoline made it to the finale. There is a panel that happened in which they introduced the authors and the defenders and the books. Those are wonderful. And then they have day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is where you should start. Let me give you an example. So this is episode 1 of the year that Cherie Demoline was on the show. So Each person has an opportunity on episode 1 to introduce their book and make a 60-second statement on why they think that this book is important and should win. Hey, isn't that the topic you're writing on? So you're going to want to do your homework here. Let's listen to this just for a few seconds. Oh, sorry. Looking for 22. So that was her introduction to the book. They all get 60 seconds to introduce their book. And I think the whole episode is wonderful. But you can also go through and just pick out the parts that are specifically Julie Black, wonderful R&B singer, who is defending the Marrow Thieves throughout these 5 episodes. And she does make it to the finale, and so you get to see her for all 5 episodes. So for example, there's a moment at, where is it? 36 minutes. I'm going to skip ahead to 36 minutes where they are debating specifically aspects of this book. So 3609, close enough. And so then all 5 of the people around the table, they've all read every book that they're debating. And so they're going to talk about each one of the books while still hoping that the book they've selected or been selected to defend is the winner. So here we go. Here's an example of another representative talking about her experience of reading The Marrow Thieves. And then he goes on to explain why. This series is absolute gold for informing your understanding of the Marrow Thieves, why Canada Reads ended up selecting it to be one of its finalists, and about why this book is so important, ultimately supporting your thesis of this book should be taught in schools. So you will want to learn what other people have had to say, internalize that, decide to what extent it reflects your own beliefs, and be able to say them in your own impassioned, articulate, informed way. So there we go. Here are your one tiny assignment is read chapter 9, 10, and 11. Definitely read chapter 9 out loud. Chapter 10, tell me 10 things that happen in chapter 10. And then read chapter 11 with the idea of reading it as a coming to story. And again, there's a cliffhanger. Continue to think about your final unit assignment or 30% of your course grade if you want to do the coming to story, the creative response to literature. Then you will watch Niigaan Sinclair's workshops. You will teach yourself something about creative nonfiction through him and think about how to integrate his strategies into your own writing. If you're going to do the critical response to literature, you want to learn as much as you can about the Marrow Thieves and why it's important. And so you're going to watch the episodes of Canada Reads, specifically the parts with Julie Black speaking about the Marrow Thieves. Although the other 4 books are wonderful, you might as well just watch them all through. We all have nothing but time, right? Okay, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always email me. I am not going to send out another assignment on Wednesday. I want you to take your time and start thinking a little bit more about this. I'm going to give you 2 days to work on it. I'm going to send you out something on Thursday, friends. So watch for me on Thursday. I hope everything's going well in your other classes and at home. Merci, Masicho. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.